Now, following the end of Nigeria's strike action against the suspension of these fuel subsidies, the economic cost to Nigeria is becoming an issue that's much in focus. Right now, Wale from Herrera will be speaking to Yemi Kale in Abuja. He's the Statistician General of the National Bureau of Statistics about the methodology that they've used to calculate the costs to the Nigerian crisis this week. Wale, over to you.
Right, thanks a lot, Lerato. Well, like you said, we're speaking to the Statistician General of the National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria, and he's going to share his thoughts on the methodology for calculating the cost of the strikes, which you have put, Dr. Yemi Kale, at 207 billion naira. Just give us a general, or should I say, a short framework on how you got that figure.
Well, yes, thank you, Wale. The best way to estimate this cost is, first of all, we looked at our projected GDP estimates for the first quarter. And the reason why we did this, unlike many other analysts who used the GDP estimates for the full year, is that we observed that in the first quarter of the year, for probably obvious reasons, the GDP, the contribution to GDP in the first quarter tends to be a lot smaller than the rest of the other quarters, at usually about 18%. So if you use the GDP numbers for the full year, you tend to overblow the losses at the end of the day. So we use our estimates for the first quarter. Once we get that, we look at the relative weights of different sectors, different activities in GDP. You find that there are three sectors: the crude oil and natural gas production, agriculture, and wholesale and retail trade, that account for over 70% of GDP. So obviously the impact on GDP will be dependent on how these three sectors were affected.
And from your report, it seems that it was really the wholesale and retail trade sector that was affected, right?
Yes, out of the three, because we know that the crude and natural gas production was hardly affected, that has been reported. We know that agriculture in Nigeria is largely subsistence. So it was obviously the subsistence farmers who didn't leave their farms to back on the strike. And even we have representation in all 36 states and the FCT, and we have staff. And for what they told us, even the commercial farms, not many of them actually, well, a few of them continued their operations despite the strike. Even in the wholesale and trade sector, in the south and southeast sector, two very large markets, the Onitsha and Aba markets, were operating almost at full capacity. So even in wholesale and trade, even though it was significant, it was reduced by the fact that many of these areas and pockets of retail trade was still going up across the country.
All right, so it seems it wasn't as bad as most people anticipated. I know that some people have put that figure at close to $3 billion, but obviously the figure that you're putting out there is much less. But so in that context, what's going to be the impact for GDP for 2012, though? Do you think, my estimate is that that figure, 207 billion naira, is less than 1% of Nigeria's GDP. What can we anticipate for the full year? Many people are already thinking that Nigeria should be able to report between 7 and 8% GDP growth this year.
I think 7 and 8% GDP growth is still possible. Like you said, the impact on the, should I say, luckily or fortunately, the strike happened in the first quarter, and in particular at the earlier parts of the year when people are just coming from the new year and so on. So activity is not really in full swing. So I don't think it's going to have significant impact, at least the strike is not going to have significant impact on our estimates for GDP for 2012. That being said, 207 billion is a lot of money. So yes, it's not something that we should we're underestimating anyway. But yes, we're not taking it lightly at all.
All right. Okay, let's talk a bit about what I think is a new wave at the National Bureau of Statistics. Since you were appointed the Statistician General, we've seen a flow of reports coming out, particularly data regarding various sectors. Many people think that it's a tough job to get all those numbers out of Nigeria, given the challenges with infrastructure and IT. But give us your agenda for the reports that we should be anticipating from Nigeria going forward, because these reports are obviously very important in gauging the economy.
Well, yes. One of the first things I did, the objective of data is should be user-driven. So one of the first things I did, right, there's no point churning out lots of data that are not particularly useful to the users. So we had a user satisfaction workshop. We tried to get from the users the kinds of data that they would like to see for their work. I wrote all the different ministries, departments, and agencies of government saying, look, we produce data, but we want to ensure that the data we produce is user-driven. It's the data that you're interested in. We got lots of our feedback, and that formed our work plan for the year. And then you can now have a well-structured work plan. You can now set timelines for the beginning and the end of data production activities. You can set data release dates.
Okay.
Which makes, and this is exactly what we are trying to do. So the data we are going to produce is going to be data that our country has told us that they require on one part from the government in terms of what they need for development and planning, in which case data is very critical, as well as the private sector. We're trying to get data that enables the private sector to actually also plan so that they can grow and all contribute towards the development of the country.
All right, the final point, I can't end this interview without getting an update on the plans to rebase Nigeria's GDP. You did announce this last year. What is the latest on this?
Yes, we are still working on it. Unfortunately, there was a lot of work that should have been done during the period of the strike. So, of course, we have been set back by a couple of weeks. We are still hoping that we might be able to complete this before the end of the quarter. I was hoping to release these numbers by the last week in January, but like I said, because of the strike and because businesses were closed, it might take a little bit longer than that, but that hasn't changed. I still have a target of before the end of the first quarter to get numbers out. Then, that being said, because of the interest, what we've sent in terms of the losses, economic costs to GDP have just been estimates. We want to get accurate numbers. So right. You know that if we rebase the GDP right now, it will hide the true impact of the strike. So we are still trying to decide whether we should go ahead with the rebasing, or we should still do the rebasing as well as continue the old methodology, so that we can give exact numbers as far as the cost to the strikers.
All right, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your insights. That was Dr. Yemi Kale, Statistician General at the National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria.